So, Craig, you've done a lot of design. Um, what I'd like to know is how do you know when something's a good idea, and when do you know when to give up?
Well, that's a kind of a multiple answered question there now. So how do you know if it's a good idea? Well, a lot of times I think as I'm speaking as a designer, is that sometimes there's just sort of gut feeling that goes along with it. So like, oh, I think that maybe this is kind of a good idea. But I think I think you got to kind of start off with like, well, how do you know where to find a good idea? You got to go before that a little bit, and that is really with observation.
Okay.
I think with any we'll talk about product. Let's say with any product, you want to be very aware of your world, and you want to watch how people are interacting with it. Okay? And you can start to see some things that work well and some things that don't work so well, and maybe you can see things that work well that could work better. Right? But it is that observation that sort of takes it, and that is where you can like really start brainstorming on any answers to questions, right? And after you sort of you have these great ideas, whatever that you get from your observation is then then you can start what I call idea generation or ideation, right? Is where in my field anyways, it's just starting to put visuals down on a page, put marks on a page, just to just start to see where they go.
So when you're working on your stuff, do you use like outside feedback to sort of tell you whether you're on the right track, or do you just do it on your own?
Yeah, no, I think with observation, I guess I should have kind of expanded on that too. Observation, I think, is seeing things, but it is very much about talking to people. Okay, and I think that is incredibly important here. So for an example, me as a footwear designer, right? I can look and see how people are using their shoes, or what purpose they're using the shoes for. But it's also very helpful to talk to somebody who's using that shoe, right? And be like, hey, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? That you'll get some information that's pretty useful if you do that. You could also, I've always found it really, really helpful to talk to salespeople in stores, right? What's selling right now? What's not selling right now? Why do you think that? Why is that? There's people who tend to be the salespeople or the manager of the stores kind of have a little bit of their finger on the pulse of what's moving, what product is actually selling, right? So that can be kind of helpful to kind of just know like, oh, okay, this stuff is working, this stuff is not working. So that is real important to sort of generate this information, and take it, but don't completely rely on it too. I think you have to go a little bit with your instinct, and start to it's a little bit of a gamble. Anything you ever make, any new product, is a gamble, right? It is not guaranteed to work. I mean, you can be somewhat strategic about it and kind of hope it might, but it isn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
There is a saying though that if you really want your product to work, be the second to market, right? Not the first.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
Okay, so it's being first to market with anything is dangerous, right? Because it might not work, right? That's the thing, that's the person who's spending $1 million on this great idea. And if it works really great, they're going to make $1 billion. But if it doesn't work, they've lost $1 million, let's say, right? Yeah. Well, you want to be very aware of like what's going on and be able to like jump on things quickly. And you can be like, oh, that's working. Okay, cool. I'm gonna see what works about it, what doesn't work about it, and make it better. And then boom, then you're in there in second place. And maybe you're not making $1 billion, but maybe you're going to make $500 million. Like on that, without the risk of having to see if it works or not.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies have that kind of go that way. There's very few companies that are number one.
Yeah.
But usually those companies that are number one have to be number one. They have positioned themselves in a spot where they cannot be number two. They can't be followers. So, the companies I would sort of just rattle off the top of my head anyways would be Apple, and it would be Nike, right? Those guys can't follow anybody. They have to be number one. So that puts them in a precarious position, but they also have a name brand, and a recognition of what it is that they do, so they're trusted, so they kind of can be number one. Yeah, but if you look at Nike shoes, you look at Apple computers, everything else in the industry follows what they do. Everybody else is number two. And there's a lot of computer companies out there, and a lot of shoe companies out there that make a lot of money. So that's what I kind of think about that.
So have you ever worked on a project, because I know you've worked with a lot of big companies, where you thought it was going to go, and then you just had to realize, like, partway in, this is not going to work, and you had to walk away from what you thought was a really good idea?
Yeah. It's been kind of like a couple of different levels of success. Some things. Yeah, for sure. I thought that I made some ballerina shoes one time. I was tasked to make these ballerina shoes, okay? And they were called them Bella Ballerina, and it was sort of like it was for little girls. They could spin around on their their feet and stuff. And I thought, like, oh, this is kind of a cool idea. All right, I'll see if this this works, and put like some weird little spinny thing in the ball of the foot, and I thought, like, oh, this is gonna be cool. It's gonna work great. And and the product went out, and it sold once, with a lot of marketing behind it, and it didn't work. And I did think that was going to work. But it was one of those things where it's like, luckily the company I was working with, they had the financial power to say, like, hey, we got to try. And that is where having a financial backup is really crucial in a lot of companies, where they kind of say, like, you throw stuff at the wall, right? And if it's something, will eventually stick. And that thing that will stick will probably do it well, but a lot of it won't.
I said, it sounds like perseverance is pretty important.
Well, I think so. I think so. That generally is the way to do it. I mean, nobody's going to hit it out of the park every single time. You're lucky if you hit it out once out of every 10. I mean, that is the truth, right? And it doesn't mean that those other 9 ideas are bad. It just means they're not, for whatever reason, they're not sticking. I read recently an article on Segway. Segway was this little kind of little vehicle that was real cool in like the early 2000s. You remember the Segway?
Oh yes.
It was going to change the way that we move around our space and stuff. And it was, had some great technology in it. It was like, it could balance on it, and it worked, and the batteries were decent and everything. And it never worked. People did not hook into it. But yet it was a great product. But it simply didn't work. And now, the company got sold off, and then it got sold off again. And eventually, I think it was now owned by a Chinese company where they've closed it completely, so it's gone. But it was a revolutionary product for sure. But who would have known, that wouldn't work. I think that, though, a good way to sort of make your chances a little bit better are to put a correct team together to work with. There's not very many people who can do everything. Most CEOs of any company will tell you that they're not very smart, but they're smart enough to know that they're not, and they can hire people who are smarter than them, and put them in the right spots. And then collectively, you can kind of come up with something that works pretty well. And so I would suggest, if anybody is trying to make their own go at anything, is to sort of have that team together there, because that is absolutely crucial. For sure. You need somebody who's good at sales. You need somebody who's good at marketing. You need somebody who's good at design. Somebody who's good at production. And all the costing, everything else that goes that's involved with making any product.